The toy in the dust sky was gray, heavy with ash. Winds moved slowly across the broken land. Buildings stood like bones, silent and covered in dust. This was not a place where anyone smiled anymore. This was a forgotten colony, once full of life, now full of ruins. Mason walked carefully, his boots crunching on broken metal and dry dirt. He was a human scavenger, here to collect parts, tools, anything useful. Most people didn't come this deep into alien land, but Mason wasn't like most people. He worked alone, he spoke little, and today something felt different. He stopped near a collapsed structure. Something small glinted in the dust. A piece of wire? No, it moved. He crouched, lowering his hand to the ground. There was a soft sound. Not wind, not machine. It was crying. Mason single quotes "ass heart" paused. He slowly stepped into the broken hallway of the structure. The sound grew clearer like whimpers. He turned a corner, his eyes adjusting to the dark, and then he saw her, a little alien girl, no older than 6 or 7 in human years, was curled into a ball beside a broken wall. Her skin was pale, violet, covered in dirt. Her eyes were wide with fear, glowing faintly. She didn't speak. She only stared at him with the kind of look that made even silence feel heavy. Mason didn't move quickly. He lowered his bag, took a deep breath, and reached inside. Slowly, gently, he pulled out a small objective stuffed toy, a soft brown bear with button eyes and stitched smile. It was old, but clean. He had kept it in his pack for years, not to sell, not for trade, just to remember. He placed the toy in the dust, a few steps away from her, and backed away. The alien girl didn't reach for it. Not yet. She looked at Mason, then the toy, then back again. Mason sat down on a rock nearby. He didn't speak. He just waited. After what felt like a long time, the little girl slowly crawled forward. Her small hand reached out, touched the toy's fuzzy arm. She picked it up, pulled it to her chest, and hugged it tightly. Mason smiled, just a little, but then he felt it. The air shifted, a new presence, heavy, protective. He turned his head slightly and froze there, standing in the shadows near the entrance of the structure was a figure, tall, still, watching an alien woman. Her body was thin, tired-looking. Her skin matched the girl's pale, violet butt was marked with scars and dirt. She wore torn, dark robes. Her eyes were sharp, glowing faintly, and filled with something between fear and fury. She didn't speak. She just watched. Mason didn't stand. He didn't reach for his weapon. He simply raised both hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. The alien girl turned her head and saw her mother. She stood up and showed the toy to her. She smiled, small, weak, but real. The mother's eyes softened, just for a moment. Her gaze moved from her daughter to the toy, and then to Mason. Still, she said nothing. Mason stayed silent too. Sometimes, words only got in the way. The alien mother took one step forward, then another. Her legs shook, as if walking was difficult. The little girl rushed to her and hugged her side, holding both the toy and her mother. They stood like that, for a while, in the broken hallway of a dead world. Then, the alien woman raised her hand and pointed, not at Mason, at the edge of the forest nearby, a warning. Mason turned his head and looked toward the trees. The fog was thick. Something moved, their small red lights flashing in the mist. Drones, patrols, maybe worse. The mother's message was clear. Danger was close. Mason nodded. He reached for his pack again, but moved slowly. He pulled out a water bottle and gently placed it on the ground near them. The little girl looked at it, then at her mother. The mother gave a single nod. The girl picked it up. Then, without a word, the alien woman placed her hand on her daughter's back and began guiding her toward the back exit of the building. But after 2 steps, she paused. She turned her head, just a little, and looked back at Mason. Her expression wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile anymore either. Mason didn't say anything. He just gave her the smallest nod. The alien woman blinked, then disappeared, with her daughter into the shadows. Mason stayed there, staring into the dark. He didn't know why he had given the toy, but something told him this was only the beginning. The silent watcher Mason didn't move for a long time. He sat in the same spot, staring into the darkness, where the alien mother and her child had vanished. His mind was filled with questions. Who were they? How long had they been hiding? And why did seeing that child smile feel like something inside him had started to heal? He stood slowly, brushing dust from his jacket. He wasn't here to make friends. He was a scavenger, a loner. He had one rule: don't get involved. And yet, here he was, giving away his only sentimental item to an alien child. Just one moment, he whispered to himself. That's all it took. He stepped outside the broken structure. The wind had picked up. Ash swirled around his boots. Ahead, the trees stood tall and black, their roots twisted like claws, and deep within the fog, red eyes blinked in and out. Watchers, machines, hunters. He knew they weren't searching for him. Not yet. They were looking for her, the mother. Mason adjusted his pack and started walking slow, careful steps toward the forest. He wasn't sure why he was following them. Maybe to protect them, maybe to understand, maybe because he couldn't stop himself as he entered the first line of trees. The world changed. It was quieter here, too quiet. The air was thick and wet, like the forest was holding its breath. Broken drones lay in the roots, rusted and stripped for parts. This place was not friendly. It was full of ghosts. He followed the faint tracks, teeny footprints, one set smaller than the other, weaving through roots and rock. After 15 minutes, the trail disappeared, but he didn't turn back. He waited. Then, he heard it, barely a whisper, a soft breath. Behind him, he turned slowly. The alien mother was there, half hidden in shadow, holding a sharp bone blade in one hand. Her eyes glowed, calm but dangerous. She didn't speak. The girl stood beside her, clutching the stuffed bear tightly, staring at Mason with curious eyes. He raised his hands again. Slowly. I'm not here to hurt you, he said gently. Just wanted to make sure you were safe. The mother narrowed her eyes, then she moved quick. Before he could even react, she stepped close, blade held at his neck, not cutting, just close, testing him. Her other hand touched his coat pocket and pulled out a small metal tool. A scanner. Her eyes widened. She looked up at him, searching his face. You salvaged her? Her voice was low, cracked. Mason nodded. Yes, just a scavenger, alone. Her grip loosened. No trade, she said. I don't want anything, Mason said. Not from you. She studied him for a long time. Then she looked at the girl. The child held up the toy. He gave me this, she said in her own tongue, which Mason couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. The mother's blade lowered, and for the first time, she stepped back and allowed him to stand close. They began walking, slowly, silently, together. They didn't go far, just a short walk through twisting trees, until they reached a hidden cave, deep behind a thick wall of stone and branches. Inside, the floor was covered with moss and strange glowing plants. It wasn't a home, it was a shelter. Cold, but safe. The girl curled up with her toy. The mother kept one hand on her shoulder, the other still holding the blade. Mason sat at a distance and pulled out a heat pack. He cracked it open, letting the warmth spread. He tossed it gently toward them. The mother stared, then placed it beside her daughter. The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. Mason finally asked, "What happened here?" The mother didn't speak. Instead, she pulled something from a pouch around her neck, a small data crystal. She tossed it to him. He plugged it into his reader, and his eyes widened. The screen flickered to life. Images, documents, reports. This wasn't just an abandoned colony. This was a secret testing zone. Humans had built a lab here, and alien families had been brought in not as guests, but as test subjects. Mason's chest tightened. The woman watched his face as he read. "We escaped," she finally said. "Only us. Rest are gone." Mason's throat went dry. "They did this?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Your kind." He looked at her. "Not all of us." She didn't answer. Outside, the sound of engines broke the silence. Patrols go closer. Mason stood. They found the cave. The mother grabbed the child. "Go," she asked. He looked around. "No, they'll see movement. We need to wait." The mother held her child close, hiding her under her cloak. She looked at Mason one last time. "You stay, or run." He looked at the girl, scared, but holding the toy tightly, and then he looked back at the mother. "I stay," he said, and outside, red lights danced through the trees. The unseen threat cave was quiet, but not safe. Outside, red lights flickered through the trees like eyes. Drones, human machines, scanning, searching. They passed like ghosts, humming low, almost whispering through the fog. Every time the light neared the cave, the alien mother wrapped her arms tighter around her daughter. Mason stayed close to the wall, crouched low, barely breathing. Inside the shelter, time slowed. The silence between the three of them wasn't just silence, it was trust building from fear. The little girl curled under her mother's cloak, the toy bear hugged tightly in her arms. Her glowing eyes never left Mason. She didn't look afraid of him anymore. The mother still watched him with suspicion, but something had changed. Not trust, not yet, but curiosity. Why had he stayed? Why did he risk his life for them? Mason didn't even know the answer himself. Hours passed. The drones moved on. Night came. Cold wind swept through the forest, shaking the leaves like whispers from the dead. Mason stood outside the cave entrance, checking the scanner he had kept, hidden until now. No drone signals nearby. They were clear, for now. He stepped back inside and knelt beside the heat source he had placed on the ground. "It's safe," he said softly. "For now." The alien mother didn't speak, but she placed her hand gently on the girl's head. "You should sleep," Mason said to the girl. She blinked at him, then at her mother, and finally nodded. She lay back down, toy bear beside her cheek. Soon, she was breathing softly. Then the mother spoke, almost like she didn't want to. "Why?" she asked. "Why you stay?" Mason looked at her, then at the girl. He answered honestly. "Because no one stayed for mine." The alien mother tilted her head. "Your child," Mason nodded. "Long time ago. Lost her. I couldn't help her, couldn't protect her. But now," he looked at the girl, "I won't run this time." The mother looked down and whispered, "You carry pain." Mason didn't reply. He didn't have to. They both did. Later that night, Mason couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. The forest had gone too still. He stepped outside the cave, checking the surroundings. Then he froze, not from sound, from instinct. Movement. Far off, between the trees. Not a drone, not a machine, something alive. It was tall, twice as tall as any human, its body covered in shifting black armor. Glowing veins of red pulsed through its skin. It moved without sound, crawling across trees, sniffing the air. A hunter. Not human, not alien, something created. Mason's blood went cold. He turned and rushed back inside. "Wake up," he hissed. The mother opened her eyes fast, her instincts sharp. The girl stirred. "We have to go now," Mason said. "What?" the mother whispered. "Not drone. Something worse." She didn't ask. She grabbed her daughter, holding her close. Mason packed up what little they had. They slipped out the back of the cave, into the forest. The cold bit at their skin. The girl held the toy tight, but didn't cry. She knew. Somehow, she knew this time was different. Behind them, branches cracked, trees shook, and then came the sound. A deep, low growl, not a natural one. This was machine and beast mixed. It echoed through the trees like death crawling on iron claws. "Keep moving," Mason whispered. They moved fast, weaving between roots and rocks, but it was faster. Within seconds, a shadow leaped from the trees, landing behind them with a thud. It stood tall, red eyes glowing, long limbs like twisted metal, mouth full of blades. The little girl screamed. The mother turned to fight, blade in hand. Mason pulled out his energy pistol, half-charged and old, but he didn't wait. He fired. A blast of light hit the creature's shoulder. It barely moved. The mother lunged, stabbing the creature's leg. It roared, swiping at her. Mason tackled her to the ground before the claw could strike. "Run," he shouted. The mother looked at him. I'll hold it." She didn't argue. She grabbed the child and ran. Mason stood, facing the monster. His gun shook in his hand. He had no plan, just time to buy. The creature charged. Mason fired again, this time at its face. The blast blinded it for a moment. He ran, not away, but toward the cliff nearby. Behind him, the beast followed. At the edge, Mason turned sharply, ducking under a branch, letting it snap back hard. The creature took the hit, but it wasn't enough. It leaped, and then a sharp, high sound cut through the air. A pulse. Mason turned. The alien mother was back. She had fired a strange alien device, some kind of energy spike. It hit the creature's chest. For a second, just one, it stopped moving. Mason wasted no time. He ran up and fired the last charge into its head. The monster fell with a heavy thud, silent, dead. Later, as they rested near a small spring, the girl placed the toy bear beside Mason and smiled. "You're brave," she said quietly. Mason smiled tiredly. The mother sat beside them. She placed her hand over the bear, then gently pushed it back toward her daughter. "He stays," she said. "He protects." Escape through the ashes forest was still again. The beast was dead. The drones were gone for now, but the danger was far from over. Mason sat by a stone, reloading his weapon with the last energy cell he had. The alien mother sat nearby, cleaning her blade with cloth from her torn cloak. The little girl, tired but calm, played quietly with the toy bear, now slightly burnt on one side. "We can't keep running like this," Mason said softly, not really expecting an answer. The alien mother looked up. Her eyes, tired but sharp, met his. "You know a way out?" she asked. Mason nodded slowly. "Maybe. There's an old human outpost, deep in the hills. If it still has power, we can send a signal. Maybe get off this planet." The mother didn't move. She was thinking. "They will come for us," she said. "If we signal." "I know," Mason replied. "But we can't stay here either. Not with more of those monsters hunting the woods." The little girl looked at them both. "We go together." Mason smiled gently. "Yes, together." The journey to the outpost was long and cold. They walked through gray hills and burnt trees. Once, this land had been full of life. Now, it looked like a graveyard. Bones of machines and skeletons of buildings stretched across the horizon. Mason walked ahead, checking for danger. The mother followed, carrying her daughter when she got too tired to walk. For a moment, they looked like a real family, but danger was never far near the base of the hill. They found signs of something terrible. A pile of bodies, not human, not alien. Machines stripped of parts. Twisted. Mason knelt to inspect them. "These aren't drones," he whispered. "There's something else." The mother stood behind him, her voice low. "Hunters. More, come." Mason stood. "We have to move, fast." They continued uphill, climbing sharp rocks and sliding down slopes. The child slipped once. Mason caught her just in time. She looked up at him and smiled. "You always catch me," she said. He nodded. "I always will." At last they reached the edge of a hidden valley. In the center stood a black metal bunker, half covered in vines and dirt. The human outpost. Mason's eyes narrowed. Still standing, they approached slowly. The door was sealed. Mason wiped dirt off the control panel and tried a code. It sparked, then flickered to life. A voice crackled from the speaker. "Identity required." He placed his hand on the scanner. After a moment, the door unlocked with a heavy clunk dot inside. The air was stale, but breathable. Lights flickered weakly. Old human tech, barely holding together. They stepped inside, for the first time in days. It felt safe. The outpost had 2 small rooms, a med bay, and a command center. Mason powered up the console and checked the systems. He found something useful. A working signal tower. "I can send a message," he said. "A rescue ship might hear." "How long?" the mother asked. "Hours, maybe days." She looked unsure. "They may come to kill, not help." "I'll take that risk," Mason replied. For her, he pointed to the child, who was now sleeping with the toy bear under her arm. Mason sent the signal. It repeated every 30 seconds. Then he searched through the system logs. What he found broke something inside him. The outpost had a secret file, encrypted, hidden behind layers of access codes. But Mason was a scavenger. He knew how to break through. When he opened the file, the screen filled with images. Experiments. Children, alien children being tested, poked, scanned, injected, then dead. Mason's hands trembled. He scrolled down and stopped. There was a photo, a young alien mother, her name, subject A17, and beside her, a baby alien girl, eyes glowing, the same face. Mason turned around. The mother was standing in the doorway, silently watching. She had seen everything. Mason stood, shaking. "I didn't know, I swear." She didn't speak, just walked forward and gently closed the file. "We escaped," she whispered. "But we were never safe." "They did this to you?" Mason asked. She nodded. "Your people," she said. "Not all of us," he said again, softly. She didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. Suddenly, the alarm blared. "Unauthorized signal detected. Possible enemy inbound." Mason turned to the screen. A ship. Not a rescue ship, but one of the corporations. They had heard the signal, and they were coming. "We have to hide," he said. "No," the mother said. "We fight." Mason looked at her, surprised. "We can't win." She looked down at her daughter. "I will not run again." They prepared. Mason rewired the defense grid. The mother set traps around the bunker entrance using old alien tech. They had one chance not to escape, but to survive the storm coming. As night fell, the ground shook with the sound of landing thrusters. Lights burned through the sky. Soldiers in black armor approached the bunker, and inside, a broken man and a wounded mother stood side by side. Ready. The child, holding her bear, whispered, "Don't be scared." Mason knelt beside her and smiled. "I'm not scared," he said, "because I've got you." The monster beneath sky turned black as the enemy ship hovered above the old outpost. Lights cut through the clouds like blades. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling of the bunker. The child woke up with a start. The bear fell from her arms. Mason picked it up and handed it back to her. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Don't move until I say." The alien mother was already at the door, blade in hand. Her eyes glowed softly, not with fear but fire. "They came fast," Mason said. She didn't look away. "They always do, to clean up their shame." Mason checked the defense grid. "We can hold them off for a while, but not forever." Outside, black-armored soldiers marched toward the bunker, silent, fast, cold, weapons charged. Their helmets had no faces, only red lights. Machines with orders. Inside, Mason took position behind the control table. You ready? The alien mother looked at him. I was born ready. You. Mason gave a dry smile. I was born tired. Then it began. The first blast hit the entrance. Metal screamed. The second tore open the door. Mason fired the first shot, hitting the lead soldier in the chest. Sparks flew. He fell, but more followed. The alien mother moved like a shadow. She was faster than they expected. Her blade sliced through armor. She dropped two before they could aim, but there were too many. Mason threw a pulse grenade. The hallway shook. Smoke filled the air. Fall back, Mason shouted. They ran to the backup room, sealed it with a blast shield. How long can we hold them? She asked. Minutes, Mason replied. The girl held her bear tight. I'm scared, she whispered. The mother touched her face. Be strong, little star. Mason looked around. The walls were cracking. They'll break through, he said. Then something strange happened. His scanner beeped. Something moved underground, beneath them. They're not alone, he said. The mother's face turned pale. It followed us. Before he could ask, the floor exploded. Metal bent, fire burst out, and from the flames rose a massive, twisted creature, part machine, part flesh. One of the original hunters. Not made by nature. Made in a lab. A mistake they buried, now awake. It roared a deep, broken scream. Mason grabbed the girl and dove away. The monster struck the wall. The soldiers, caught by surprise, were thrown like dolls. The alien mother ran toward it, slashing its leg. The blade sparked, barely cutting through. Mason aimed at the ceiling. This place can't hold. He fired at the supports. Metal groaned. The ceiling began to collapse. The hunter roared again. Mason yelled, "Run!" They escaped through the side tunnel, dragging the girl between them. Behind, the creature fought the soldiers, staring through them in a storm of metal and blood. Then the bunker exploded. They fell into a ditch outside the hill. Dirt rained down. For a moment, silence, only breath, only heartbeat. Mason coughed and rolled over. Everyone alive. The mother nodded. The girl whimpered. Bear gone. Mason reached into his coat. He had grabbed it just in time. He handed it to her. Never leave a teammate behind. He smiled. She hugged it tight. They hid under the rocks, watching the enemy ship above. Most soldiers were dead, killed by their own creation. But now the ship began to fire, searching, scanning, a final sweep. Mason turned to the mother. We can't stay here. Where? She asked. He looked at the smoke, then at her. We end it. They crawled toward the last ridge. At the top was the control signal tower. The only thing left working. Mason had an idea. We overload the signal core, turn it into a beacon. Not just a message, but a scream. For help? She asked. For truth, he replied. Let the whole sector know what happened here. What they did to your people. The mother was quiet. Then she said, and if it brings more enemies? Mason looked at the girl. Maybe it also brings allies. They reached the tower. Inside, sparks flew from every corner. Broken wires. Shattered glass. Mason worked fast. The mother guarded the entrance. The girl sat behind a crate. Silent. Then the ship turned, heading toward them. They found us, Mason said. He ripped open the panel. I can trigger the pulse, but it'll fry everything, including me. The mother stepped forward. I will do it. You have a child, Mason said. I've already lost mine. So have I, she said. Mason paused. She looked away. I had two. The girl is the only one left. His heart ached. Then we both have something left to fight for, he said. Together, they pulled the final wire. The ship was above them. Mason activated the beacon. A bright, blinding wave shot into the sky. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. From all directions, systems jammed. Transmissions overloaded. The truth went out. Broadcast to space. Broadcast to the world. What was hidden now burned bright. They barely escaped before the tower exploded, as they rolled down the hill. Fire behind them. The girl laughed. She wasn't afraid anymore. Mason looked at the mother. Her eyes were wet. "What now?" he asked. She pointed to the stars. "We wait," she said. "For who?" She smiled softly. "For whoever still believes in kindness." The answer and a smile ashes still fell from the sky, like soft gray snow. The tower was gone. The ship had retreated, and the forest was silent once more. But something had changed. Not just the air, not just the land. Mason, the alien mother, and the little girl sat beside the burning ruins of the signal tower. The blast had shaken the ground for miles. The enemy's systems were jammed. But more than that, the truth had gone out, across channels, to every open ear. Somewhere out there, people were listening. Mason leaned back against a tree, the cold bark against his spine. He had cuts on his arm, bruises across his chest, and dirt in every fold of his clothes. But, for the first time, he didn't feel alone. The alien mother sat across from him, her daughter sleeping between them with the toy bear clutched tightly to her chest. Her cloak covered the child like a soft wing. Her eyes, glowing faintly, stayed fixed on Mason's face. "You were willing to die," she said quietly. Mason nodded. "So were you." The mother looked down. "What changed?" Mason asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "You smiled." He looked at her, confused. "On the ridge," she added, "when the sky burned. You smiled." He touched his mouth. "I didn't even notice." "I did," she whispered. "No one smiles when they lose everything. But you did. It meant you had something left." The girl stirred. She opened her eyes and looked up. "I had a dream," she whispered. "We were flying in a big ship, and there were stars everywhere." Mason smiled gently. "Sounds like a good dream." The mother pulled her close. "Maybe dreams are just memories from the future." The child giggled. "Is that true?" "It can be," Mason said, "if we make it true." Suddenly, a sharp beep came from Mason's wristpad. He sat up fast. "Incoming signal." The mother looked at him. "Who is it?" Mason checked the screen. It was scrambled, but the origin was clear. Not from the enemy, not human military, civilian. "Someone heard the broadcast," he said. "They're coming." The mother stood tense. Friend or foe? Mason looked at the screen again. "We'll find out." 2 hours passed. Then a ship broke through the clouds, smaller than the last, older, patched together with parts from different systems. Not a warship, not a government vessel, a free trader. Mason waved a flare into the sky. The ship landed gently in the field. The door opened with a hiss. A woman stepped out, human, gray hair, sharp eyes, pilot's coat flapping in the wind. She looked at Mason, then at the mother, then at the girl. "You the one who sent that pulse?" she asked. Mason nodded. "We are?" She stepped closer. "We picked it up across 4 systems." "What the hell happened here?" Mason handed her the data core. "Everything is in here. Proof of what they did." The woman took it, plugged it into her device. As she scrolled through it, her face changed. Shock, anger, grief. She looked up. "We'll take you wherever you need to go." Mason looked at the mother. "Will you come?" he asked. The mother didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't know where to go." "Then come with me," Mason said softly. "We're both lost. Maybe we find something together." On board the ship, the girl pressed her face to the window, staring at the sky. Mason sat beside her. "This is your first time flying?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." "Are you scared?" She looked up. "No," she said. "You're here." Mason blinked hard. His chest tightened. The mother entered the cabin. She sat across from him. Neither said a word. But after a long silence, she reached out and placed her hand over his not as a soldier, not as a stranger, but as something more. Mason looked at her hand, then at her eyes, and for the first time in years, he smiled again. Hours later, in the quiet of space. Mason stood at the window alone. The stars stretched out forever behind him. The girl slept peacefully. The mother watched over her. Mason stared into the void, thinking about everything that had happened, and everything still ahead. Then a soft voice broke the silence. "You said you lost your daughter." He turned. The mother was standing there. "Yes," he said, "long ago. Sickness. There was nothing I could do." "But you kept her toy," she said. He nodded. "I guess. I never let go." The mother touched his arm. "Maybe you didn't lose her," she said. "Maybe she led you here." Mason didn't speak. He only looked at her and smiled. A family in the stars. Stars outside the ship were calm, but inside Mason's heart, a storm still moved. They were safe for now, floating through the dark, carried by an old trade ship, far from war zones, far from the wreckage of the burned colony. But safety didn't mean peace, not yet. Mason stood beside the control panel, staring at the glowing blue map. Their next stop was a neutral zone, the Arcadia station, a place with no flags, no armies, just wanderers, refugees, traders, and broken people, with tired eyes. The alien mother stood beside him, her name still unknown, her language still partly hidden. But Mason had learned something far more important than her name. He had learned her silence, her pain, and her strength. "We can start over." "There," Mason said softly. "You and your daughter." The mother looked at him. "You too." He smiled. "Maybe, if they let me." Her eyes narrowed. "You saved us. They will." In the ship's lower room, the little girl sat on the floor with wires, spare tools, and her old toy bear. The bear now had stitches and tiny blinking lights. Mason had helped her add them. It wasn't just a bear anymore. It was a guardian. She held it up proudly. "I call him Brave." Mason laughed. "Good name. Like you," she said. He froze, then smiled. "I'm not brave," he whispered. "Yes, you are," she replied. "Mama says you are more than soldier. You are heart." Mason blinked, holding back the weight in his chest, as the ship neared Arcadia station. The trader captain returned from the cockpit. "Bad news," she said. "Your signal, it reached more people than you think." Mason looked up. She tossed him a screen. News feeds. Open channels, civilian reports. People across systems were now sharing the truth about the experiments, about the labs, about the forgotten colony, about the child. "You broke the silence," the captain said. "You started a fire." Mason scrolled down. Some praised him, some hunted him, but all knew the name now. The man who gave a toy to an alien child. They landed at Arcadia station 3 hours later. The dock was full of noise, steam, and strange voices. Humans, aliens, hybrids, all moving like rivers through tunnels of metal. Mason stepped down first. The girl held his hand tightly. The mother followed behind, her head low, cloak covering her face. Eyes followed them, some kind, some suspicious, but none dared to stop them. A station official approached them. "Name?" she asked. Mason handed her the ID chip. The official scanned. It paused, then looked up. "You're the one from the broadcast." Mason stayed quiet. The official looked at the mother and daughter. "They with you?" "Yes," he said. The official studied him a moment longer, then smiled. "Welcome to Arcadia." She moved aside. Mason exhaled. Days passed. They stayed in a small room near the upper ring, nothing fancy, but safe. Mason fixed broken tech in return for food. The mother helped teach alien children in a refugee school, and the girl made friends, real ones. For the first time in forever, they lived without running. One night, as the lights dimmed and the stars outside blinked softly, Mason stood at the balcony, staring out. The mother joined him. She didn't speak. She just stood beside him. Finally Mason said, "I used to think helping one life didn't matter, that it was just a drop in an ocean." She turned to him. But one drop makes a wave, she said. He looked at her. Thank you, he whispered. For what? She asked. For letting me stay. She reached for his hand, held it gently, firmly, like it belonged in the other room. The little girl placed her toy on the bed and whispered, "Brave. He saved me." Then she curled beside it, and for the first time in her life, she slept without fear. Months passed. Mason was offered a job on the station, counsel to represent displaced survivors. He accepted. The mother was invited to speak at a galactic council. She didn't speak many words, but when she placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder and said, "This is who they tried to break," the room fell silent. Their story spread, not as war, not as blame, but as hope. A human gave a toy to a little alien girl and changed to galaxies. One evening, the girl ran up to Mason with a drawing. It showed 3 figures, her mother, and Mason beneath it. She wrote in her small learning letters, "My family." Mason looked at the drawing, and for the first time in his life, he cried. Not because of pain, not because of loss, but because he was found.